Hey guys, what is up? Today we have the incredible opportunity to hear from William Buhlman. So William has been exploring the out-of-body state for about 45 years now. He's the author of 4 different books that cover everything from how to have an out-of-body experience to a compilation of other people's experiences to reported near-death experiences and then to preparing for the transition of death. He's also got a number of audio courses available, and he teaches a 6-day workshop at the Monroe Institute called the Out of Body Intensive. If you're interested in any of his books, his courses, upcoming events, or tons of other information, William's website is astralinfo.org. I think it is safe to say, William, that you are one of the foremost authorities on this topic today, and I really appreciate you being here with us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
So I try to keep my channel as a fairly close-knit community. I actually started my channel a couple of years ago to meet like-minded people. So I communicate with them regularly over comments and Facebook, and one of the things that's come up over and over again is that people want to hear from you. And not only that, they actually were interested in providing or helping provide the questions and topics that we cover today. So the things that we're going to talk about were actually submitted by my viewers. So I think this should be a good conversation.
Okay, very good.
All right, so first question. You have been projecting for 45 years now, which is an incredible amount of experience to have under your belt. At this point, do you feel like there's still any luck involved in the process, or are you pretty much just able to set your mind on projection and do it at will?
Well, it varies depending on how involved I am in my physical existence. It's for me, and I think for most people, it's still a hit and miss issue. I try to do a technique every day of some kind of meditative technique. And generally, I don't know, it can vary quite a bit, but once every 10 days is probably about the kind of like, but there's no norm. You could have 5 in a week and then have nothing for 3 weeks. So it's hard for me to there's no average, so to speak. But if I'm heavily involved in my physical life, where there's a lot of pressure on me, I typically have less. And so it all varies, but I'm more interested in getting the most out of each experience. That's my focus, is not only having the experience, but getting the most I can from that experience. It's not numbers that counts, it's
right.
How much knowledge you can gain during the experience is what really counts.
That's really interesting to hear you say that. I guess I always just kind of hoped that in my future at some point in time I'll just be able to go just click and I'll just be out and I'll be able to have these experiences at least more frequently. At this point I'm to the point where I can get out probably 2 out of every 10 times, and I just feel like there's so much luck left that's involved in this process that I'm just trying to eliminate.
That's not bad at all. That's a good percentage. I really say so.
You know, I do find that I run into the same scenario you were talking about, though, where life just gets in the way, and whether it's, you know, thinking about politics or work or just family stuff and, you know, what my kids are doing, it definitely impacts my success rate. And then I meditate and try to pull myself back together.
Yeah, kids can get pretty grounded. I have 2 myself, so I know that.
All right, so let's say you have the opportunity to, you know, meditate, do whatever you do to get your mind in the right place, and you build this intent to have an OBE, and you lay down and your intent is to get out of body. Do you find that you can just get out of body, you know, pretty predictably, reliably, or is there still some luck involved?
Well, yes, because our energy bodies are always in change. They're always in shift. There's a lot of elements involved in OBEs. It isn't just doing a technique. It's about are your energy centers open, and are you completely open on every level? There are issues involved in OBEs that many people don't talk about. And, you know, keeping energy centers open and flowing, let's just call it that, is a very important aspect of out-of-body experiences. So it takes, you have to address many different little issues within yourself. Because we're vibrational energy beings, essentially, that are currently inhabiting a dense vehicle of consciousness. So we have to be aware of that and be open to various shifts that are occurring within us. So that's why I think as far as removing all. I think that's for everybody. That's a constant process of trying to keep yourself as open as possible. I'm talking about energetically,
Right.
not just
Yeah.
mentally. It's an energetic thing. If you have a child that's sick, you're going to get soft at you. I'm just using that as one example.
Sure. Yeah.
If you get hyper, let's just say you're in a car accident or you have a trauma of any kind, you have to stay calm and to initiate an OB. You have to stay you have to go deep and stay totally calm and relaxed. And if you're involved in a lot of mental activity, whatever it may be, or stress, or deadlines, that's going to impact your whole experience.
So when you say energy work, maybe expound a little bit more on that. I've got a question further on in the list asking specifically about energy work. But are we talking about breathing techniques? Are we talking about moving energy around in your body, opening your third eye? Is this are you referring to like opening chakras and or balancing chakras?
Yes, in a way, in my workshops, I do a lot of, especially the first day, we do a lot of energy work. Especially the first morning for the first 4-hour session, because we have time. We have it's 6 long, so the first 4 hours. I mean, we do techniques, but I spend a lot of time on keeping that energy flowing, open chakras. My assistant at the Monroe Institute is an expert on energy body work. She does the energy body class. She's a graduate of Barbara Brennan School. She has a great background on energy body work, and she assists me in doing this group energy body work for the 24. Generally, there's 24 people in each class, 24, 25. So yes, I think that is important for everyone. Pulsing energy too, from head to toe. Get our energy bodies in motion. Get our inner energy moving, opening up our energy centers. That's all important aspect. It's often overlooked. Everybody's so obsessed with techniques. And like every year there's a new magic, or every 6 months there's a new magic technique that guaranteed. That's not the way this works. It's all working on yourself and getting yourself as open as possible, and then selecting the technique that resonates with you, because everybody has their own strengths. So that's why I present a lot of different approaches, because people respond differently to different techniques.
Yes, that is absolutely the case. This energy work, it's good to hear you talk about that, because energy work, quite honestly, is something that I haven't put a lot of time and effort into in the past. I always viewed it as sort of an optional component, a non-necessity, sort of an esoteric idea that, I've had out-of-body experiences without doing energy work, so I just never saw it as a requirement. But I will say, lately I read a book by a guy named Louis Monero, and, Robert Bruce talks about this as well, doing this energy bounce type technique where you're sending energy to your feet, to your head, to your feet, to your head repeatedly, and then that's supposed to open up your energetic centers and in turn, make out-of-body experiences more frequent. So I've only been doing this for about 3 weeks at this point, and I enjoy the sensations so far. I think it's too early for me to really say it's helped or it hasn't helped, but being that you're talking about this now, I'm definitely going to continue down that path, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, it's an important aspect of it. I think opening up our chakras, or energy, I just call them energy centers. There's a lot of little things that need to be done. Let's just say to some extent, it's not just one thing. A lot of people overlook the inner work needed to get there. For instance, a lot of people just can't even relax. You have to learn. Like I was a hypnotherapist. I had my own practice years before I even wrote a book on OBEs. So I became very good at self-hypnosis. And that's, you have to be able to place yourself into a really deeply relaxed state. And that's a very important part of this. And a lot of these, let's just say prep stages, are overlooked today because everybody's so fixated on direct and indirect and all this other, none of that matters if you're not yourself in the proper state. I mean, nothing's going to happen. So you should spend time. I recommend people that are practicing this to do any kind of energy work, like qigong. I recommend that to people that are new to this, or it doesn't matter, new or old. Any practice that gets your energy body open and the inner energy flowing will assist in your OBEs. It just simply will.
Thank you for that. I will definitely continue down this path of energy work, and we'll see where it leads. So one more thing I'd like to touch on before we move to the next question. You mentioned that you focus more on the quality of an experience rather than the quantity of experiences that you have. You want to make the most out of any experience that you've got. Do you have a list of things that you'd like to accomplish, sort of a task list or a to-do list of things that you haven't experienced yet that you would like to while you're out of body?
Most of the time I am open to, I don't micromanage it to that extent. I 10 years of that. The first 10 years I micromanaged because I thought I could figure it all out. I was a little arrogant as a young man. And I was having a lot of experiences. I wrote about some in my first book. But most of those were etheric type experiences. You're walking through walls and flying and doing things like that. And eventually you just get tired of that. And you want to do more. So I follow my I just call it the higher self at this point. I let that more evolved part of me, so to speak, I let it take over, and I don't try to let my ego mind as much get in the way. But I found you can have all the plans and goals you want, but once you're out of body, another part of you seems to take over, for lack of a better word. Call it your higher mind. And so all those plans that you may have had seems to just dissolve away, and suddenly you're off doing something else. So I allow my higher self to be my guide in my experiences. The one thing in the last 10 years I've been really focusing on, if I do have a moment where I feel I can have total control, and I do a very powerful affirmation of self now, or next level now. I always try to push it. If it's mundane, I go to the next level. I try to push it to that extent. But generally, that's not the case. Generally, you find yourself, if you're open to things, your higher self will give you the experience you need at that given moment. But then you have to figure out where that fits into the bigger picture. You have to have trust in yourself. You have to trust this higher aspect of yourself.
Well, maybe I'll have to do that. I'll have to try giving up control a little bit and see where that leads. The whole idea of using a task list or a list of things that you want to do is something that I started doing in the early days because I felt like my experiences just never lasted long enough, and I felt like if I didn't have something that I wanted to accomplish, I would be out and I would be in my room and I would be like, all right, now what do I do? And by the time I decided, I'd snap back and that would be the end of it. And so I felt like a task list just helped me make more, I guess, productive use of an experience.
Yeah.
One more thing that you said that I found interesting is that you mentioned how you go into these projections with these plans of action or these lists of things to do, and quite often you get pulled in a different direction. So I have found that to be exactly the same. I'll go in with this plan and this intent, and I get pulled in a completely different direction. And what I found is that those experiences where I let that happen, these are the most profound experiences that I have.
Yeah, you can actually request assistance from your higher self and just see what happens. That's kind of experiences that I've done. I learned kind of the hard way of trying to micromanage it. And now I trust my higher self to give me what I need more. But if it is mundane, for whatever the reason, or repetitive, or however you want to perceive it, then I do make some kind of command. I teach a lot of commands in my workshops for control. I spend a lot of time teaching control methods, like awareness now, to increase your perception and your clarity of because people forget you don't have eyes. You don't have physical eyes or physical ears. There's no air when you leave your body. There's no gravity. All the things that we're used to don't exist anymore. So you have one thing, your state of consciousness. You have to sharpen that state of consciousness. That's where all the should be. Having your total attention on how sharp can I make, for lack of a better word, how aware can I be in this experience so I can obtain the knowledge I seek. Because I also have questions that I'm always looking for. But unless we're open to a greater part of ourselves, we'll always be limiting ourselves, I have found. But I'm a great believer in, for instance, a next level now. If I'm ever in a mundane environment, whatever, when I by mundane, I mean not interesting, whatever the reason may be. First, you have to control yourself. So I really stress this whole idea. As soon as you leave your body, you move 10 feet away from your body and you focus. I use awareness now as my technique for centering myself. It's very important, and many people don't do the basics. And that's why there's so many issues of lack of visibility, heaviness. All of the limits that people have during an OBE is based on one thing: lack of conscious awareness in that energy body that you're experiencing. So you must focus more conscious awareness into your energy body. And you do that, I do it, and I teach awareness now. You repeat it, awareness, and it's a command, not this, wimpy thing. It's and awareness now, and you'll feel suddenly you're sharper, your perception is greater, because you're not seeing through eyes, you're seeing with your mind. And people forget that. So you have to focus on your state of consciousness always. That's what's most important. And not the environment. People are so fixated on what they're seeing. The most important thing is always totally focused on your state of consciousness. Enhance it to the millionth degree if you can. And then you'll be able to understand your environment better and comprehend what's around you, which is super important.
Yeah, I've tried some of these commands. I've used Clarity Now, which I believe you mentioned in Adventures Beyond the Body, and I've had that work really well for me. I also created a variation of that that said, like, Light Now, for example, when things are very dark and groggy and gloomy looking, and I've had that work as well. But it's just like you say, you've got to have a lot of intent and intention behind it. It's not enough to just say the words.
Right. It's all about intention. Just saying the words mean nothing. You have to have a strong intention around it, and then it begins to work. And often it needs to be repeated, and a lot of people don't do that. But any time you have visibility or heaviness issues, do this. It will clear it up.
Yeah, I've had that heaviness sensation many times where I'll roll out and I'll be almost stumbling through my room like my body is drunk and everything is just very dark, very gloomy, very heavy.
Lack of awareness in the energy body. It also limits you in your ability to move interdimensionally. You have to increase your awareness before you're even capable of having, let's just say, freedom of mobility.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case.
Which is very important.
Yeah, especially if you ever plan on exploring beyond your own bedroom.
I found a shocking thing there. I don't know where, it's been years ago, but there was some study that said that most people that have body experiences never leave their homes.
That's not surprising based on people I've talked to as well.
I don't recall, and I have found that to be somewhat
kind of sad.
People have so many sad, and it's so many fears. They're comfortable in their home. They feel, and once you walk out that door, the door is always can represent a major shift in your environment, which is quite common, without getting too detailed. Often a doorway will bring you into another dimensional reality. And the door is a representation of a shift of consciousness. So can stairs. So it's very important. But doors especially have an important significance. And most people are just comfortable there. unfortunately, in our society still, there's so many fear-based beliefs floating around that are totally unjustified, but they're part of a 2,000-year-old, let's just call it manipulative state of consciousness, fear-based beliefs that are overlaid. And that's one of the most important things we have to begin to address within ourselves, because we were all brought up with a lot of these, let's just call it, the whole idea of hell and damnation. Yeah, that's how much more fear-based can you get? And here, TVs, movies, religions often, and they reinforce this to the collectives out there. And it's a very negative collective belief system that is unfortunately a part of the human experience. We have to break free from that. If you want to gain I feel you have to break free from those limiting beliefs if you're really going to obtain the answers for yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. That is very important if you're going to move forward in this practice. All right, well, let's move on to our next question. So I think this will be an interesting one. The next question is, if you could go back in time 40 years and give yourself some piece of advice that you think would help you most over this process of learning this practice, what would that advice be?
Oh, that's actually easy to answer. I wish early on I would have known more about higher self. And this concept of higher self now, which I feel is so, the most important thing I would have probably done is to try to focus and project my awareness to higher levels faster, instead of just exploring the parallel world, which I did, a long time, but certainly 5 years, first 5 years, and it was exciting. Don't get me wrong, it's exciting. But if I had to do it over, the one thing I would do is I would have stopped my external motion, and I would have just centered myself and made that demand, higher self now, higher self now, higher self now, and just see where it goes. That's what I would have done, because the true exploration is inward, not outward. The true benefits of out-of-body exploration is actually, it's an inner journey of consciousness, and people become too fixated on moving externally parallel, where the real amazing, mind-blowing journeys are the inward journeys that we make when we go beyond even the astral, and we go inward into our other dimensional selves and experience higher aspects of ourselves. That's where the real journey lies. I write about this. It's an inner journey of consciousness, and most people don't think that way. We're conditioned to think externally, so we end up focusing on going to a friend's house, visiting a girlfriend, walking through walls, flying. And there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. It's all can be exciting, but that's not where the real profound journey is. The profound journey is just to still yourself and then go inward into your other selves and start to experience the higher aspects of yourself. Ideally, go to the highest aspect you can possibly obtain, whatever that may be for each individual. That's where the answers are found.
Yeah, I would say at this point I spend probably 95% of my time in what people call the real time zone, or locale one, or this simulation of this physical world, walking around neighborhoods, walking through walls, and flying, of course. Flying is my number one favorite thing to do at this point.
Yeah.
But at some point, I think that will get old, and I'll have to find something
right.
more meaningful.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And flying is hard to control. As you go along, and as you know, eventually you end up snapping to your body. It's not the easiest thing to control, and it's not exciting. It's incredibly fun, incredibly exciting, absolutely. Another thing that I would suggest to people that take this practice seriously, many people, I've been teaching this now for many years, this concept of going inward and out of body experiences and and stop focusing externally on these objects. Who cares? These objects. They're all temporary. Just all objects are crystallized thought. They're a thought form, manifested essentially. So they're all temporary. So all form is temporary. So that's not where the answers are. Another thing I would suggest, because if people are not ready to experience their higher self, whatever that perception is for them, they may not experience anything, and that becomes frustrating. The other thing I would highly recommend is next level now during an OBE. People have better results with next level now. Now you could get more precise, but I have found that the intention is what counts. You know, some people get more, let's just say, higher level now, or I don't think that's needed, but have whatever people are comfortable with. In other words, instead of making the great leap of consciousness, just go to the next energy level within yourself. What we're doing, we're shifting our consciousness inward into our next vibrational energy body. If you're in your etheric body and you go next level, you would end up potentially in your astral body, which is a huge leap for people, because the freedom of the astral body is so much higher than the etheric body. The etheric body is pretty much locked into the parallel world, the projection matter, even though it's where in the astral you're entering the physical world dissolves and you're in a whole different vibrational space, which is incredibly vast. Millions of realities on the astral. So you can go, in other words, that's when you begin to become really an effective explorer, and it opens up a whole new realm that's mind-blowing. That's what Bob Monroe did when he rolled out into what he called the second. He was moving into that higher, he just called it rolling to his second. He was rolling to that next vibrational energy body within himself. And that's when he began to have the really wild experiences. And that's what I would recommend. It's very doable. And people get what they're ready for, essentially. Sure. So don't get frustrated. I'm speaking to all the listeners. Don't get frustrated, because it's like you have to get used to each of the energy bodies have a different quality, they're different density, you have different capabilities in each energy body that we possess. So you have to learn your own capabilities. There's a learning curve here, and people have to be aware of that. The is different from the etheric in our capabilities, our freedom of mobility. It's a lot. But then you have to adapt to that energy body. And that goes for every energy body that we experience, every dimensional reality. So it's, anyway, next level now can be really the exciting way to get out of the physical and do it in be aware for most people, the perception, this freaks people out. When you make that shift of consciousness, many people experience almost like the etheric world will almost appear like it's melting, because you're moving inward. If you maintain your focus of awareness, when you do a dimensional shift, your current dimension from we would perceive as a visual context, that will appear almost like it's melting, and then a new reality will. That's not actually what happened. You have shifted your conscious awareness to a higher vibrational body in yourself. And in doing so, you have moved inward into the universe. And that's why there's that weird percent of melting that occurs.
Very interesting. So you differentiate between different types of energetic bodies while you're in the out-of-body state. So you're saying the etheric body, then you make a transition from the etheric body to the astral body, and that they've got two completely different sets of capabilities, the opportunity to have completely different experiences in these two, I guess, bodies, maybe environments as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. For most people, they would experience. And it's a major shift for people. Well, the freedom, you can feel the freedom of it, immense. And of course, now you'll no longer, The dead giveaway is when all physical context, all physical reference points will disappear. Then you know, as long as you have physical realities around you, in other words, parallel or almost exact, like 90%, you're in your densest energy body, your physical energy. That's a clear reference point. As soon as that dissolves away, you know you entered at least the beginning stages of the astral, the denser areas of the astral. And you can move, and the astral, of course, is vast. There's countless millions of consensus realities. People put this limit. By the way, I find no relevancy 7 and 7 theory that Theosophy put out. I find no relevancy. There is so many subdimensions. And I find, to be quite frank, they're expanding. As we expand consciousness, these dimensions are reflected in their states of consciousness and that are manifest as domains. So people forget that. So forget about these old rules that are out there. Oh, your 7 levels and your 7 sub-levels and all that. I don't know who come up with that, but I find it's not accurate at all, especially when things are constantly expanding.
Well, I'm definitely going to give that a shot, the command, the higher level now. I've been looking for a way to leave this locale one, this real time zone, for a while now.
Or next level now. Next level now, because then it would be the next level that is good for you. That's what's important here. If you demand higher self now, you're making a huge leap of consciousness. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? You have to be really ready for that kind of, I'm talking about energetically open and in sync. I mean, but next level now is generally for many people, it's doable. It's a realistic approach. And it gets you out of the etheric or the parallel world, as many people call it. It shifts you into higher vibrational reality that you can handle.
All right, so next level now. Well, I'm definitely going to put that into practice, and we will see what I can accomplish with it. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. Next question is, are you currently working on any books?
Yeah, I am. I'm working on a couple projects. I'm always working on something. I'm working on the title is yet to be made, but a transformational bedtime stories. It's a series of short stories. That the concept is to read them at night, and it will spur people's lucidity. And it's a series of short stories that are really have to them, but they are still. This is new to me. I like to shift things. I like to do new things. I like to always expand into a new genre. I think these stories have real power to them, and they're short stories. There'll be the title may be Transformational Bedtime Stories. I haven't decided for sure, but I just follow my intuition, and actually my wife and I are writing these stories. It's just fun to do. I find writing nonfiction, if you want to call it that, it's based on. Writing fiction is more fun than writing nonfiction. It's just that simple. It's just fun to do. And but yet there's a real punch to these stories based on nonfiction accounts. But that's one of the projects I'm working on.
I think that's a great idea. Creating like kids' stories to teach them about projection early on.
Well, they're not children's. This isn't children's stories. That's another project I had thought about, is writing a children's book. And I even had a title for it, The Boy That Could Fly. That's a different project. This is for adults. Transformational bedtime stories for adults. And they're really twists at the end. Some of them give you a real punch in the gut. And it's kind of like you read this as a wake-up, and then you might dream about this topic. Because you're saturating your mind.
Oh yeah, that helps a great deal.
People have OBEs just by reading an OBE book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
it helps. It saturates your mind. So that's the concept.
Very cool. I like the idea of using short stories to saturate your mind with these ideas before you go to bed. I really like the idea of the kids' story.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mention that because I actually was writing a children's book too some time ago, and then I put it aside. I would start writing, and then I put it aside, and I come back to it. But I'm still considering the concept of writing a children's book about OBEs.
Well, from everything I've read, it seems that kids just take to this practice a little more naturally, whether that's because they've got more time to practice or because they're not weighed down with dogmatic beliefs.
And there's a lot of children, based on my surveys that I've done, and I write about this in Secret of the Soul, that children before puberty very open to OBEs. My son's at them all the time.
Interesting.
But soon as children hit puberty, it all seems to stop. But they have a lot of experiences. Unfortunately, they can't share them with their parents. I couldn't share them with mine. My mother would always say I was just a dream. That's this. But my sons had all kinds of wild experiences when they were growing up, including playing ball with their dead grandfather. Both of them. They were two. I had twin boys, and they would literally tell me. I would always ask them in the morning, "You have any interesting dreams?" I made sure I tried to do my best to keep them as open as possible.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think that's incredibly important.
Oh, I think so too. I always encourage them to be open to, let's just say, experiences that's beyond the physical. It's called them dreams because when you're 5 years old, that's all you need to say.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, a 5-year-old's not going to differentiate between dreams and an out-of-body experience.
But I could write a book about their experiences.
Well, maybe we could, let's move on to your survey that you've done. So you've got a survey where you have collected results from people who have had out-of-body experiences. I believe 16,000 different results or people?
16,000 OBs, 42 nations, countries.
And are you still doing this survey? Are you still collecting results, or is this something that's just kind of, it's been wrapped up?
No, I haven't. No, I'm not. No, I stopped compiling the information. Actually, I figured, 16,000 was enough to get a pretty strong consensus.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, but for 10 years, I did that survey.
10 years? Wow. That's cool. So is there anything in the survey that surprised you?
Oh, it was so many things. I tried to, a lot of the Secret of the Soul, each chapter was about some of the surprises. I tried to clarify it. I had a lot of experiences with their pets. I was going to include an entire chapter about that, but HarperCollins is really a freak about the length of the book. So I had to cut my pet chapter. I tried to keep the chapters in that was most meaningful, but oh goodness, I had a lot of people that were having experiences with their pets. Some wild stuff was coming up. I had women who were pregnant would have OBEs with their children before they're born.
That is very cool.
Stuff like that. I mean, very like face-to-face encounters with your baby before the baby's not a baby, of course. It's just an individual who's about to enter that body, and those type of experiences. But it was, that kind of thing. There was another whole book there, really. But the pet experiences were wild too. People would have all kinds of pets hang out with they're right there. When a pet passes, they don't move on often. I found that I've had 50 people write to me. Their pets are right there laying in bed with them. They're etheric body of their pet. And they can feel the pet there next to their cat or their dog. And when they have an out-of-body experience, you're on the same level. If you're in your body and you're, let's just say, dead pet in his or her etheric body, then you two can, at the same level, you can see and communicate with one another. I write about this in Beyond the Body, where my dog,
that's right. I remember that.
On multiple, I only included one, but he would follow me all the time, out of body. It was mind blowing. This whole idea that we're so superior is, kind of blows that right out of the water. They're evolving just like we are in a way. They're using a physical vehicle of consciousness to evolve. They're just using a different vehicle of consciousness. But I feel they're on the same path that we're on, based on my experience. It's on a parallel path. And people make judgments about such things without having any knowledge. I had a lot of people that communicated with their pets. Have conversations with their pets.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it is. That's the kind of thing that happened now. As long as you're open to it, they're an evolving consciousness. Everything is an evolving consciousness. Well, people forget there has to be something animating the biological body. This consciousness animates the body. And that consciousness never dies. It just moves in another energy form. That's all. Nothing's ever ends. There's no death for anybody, including animals. No one. That's one thing I have learned and know for a fact, that the whole concept of death is just silly. It's like it's been said before, but it's just like you just walk into another room. Nothing's changed really. Your whole state of consciousness is present.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So it's good to know. It's good. That's one of the beauties of out-of-body experiences, is that you get a lot of great confirmation about who you are and what you are and where you're going. It's very important, because that reduces fear. And fear is the greatest problem with humanity. The greatest issue facing humanity is lack of knowledge of self. That's really the great block for humanity, and has been. That's where the fears come from. That's where wars come from. That's where all the ills of humanity come from, lack of knowledge of self. If we knew what we are and how immortal we are and how incredible we are and creative we are and how interconnected we are, there'd be no wars. It'd be silliness to steal from someone else.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's always, everything comes around. Everything's connected. I always said if everybody had an out-of-body experience, it would be the end of all wars, and because everybody would wake up and realize, oh my God, how stupid is that to kill somebody?
Wouldn't that be great?
That's just insanely stupid.
Yeah, I agree. If we could just get everybody on board with this practice, I think this world would be a very different place.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of OBEs, though. You get self-knowledge from experience. That's what makes it important. People forget that. You no longer have to be a pawn of belief systems.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's so many people who associate this practice or this process with spirituality.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, what I think is really great about this is the fact that you can actually experience this stuff yourself. You can actually firsthand take part in it. Rather than, for instance, when I was growing up, I was part of a very religious household.
Yeah.
And I was told, here's what you believe because we say you should believe it. And you can't verify it, no, you can't experience it, but this is what you believe anyway. And with this, first-hand experience of everything.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly. You discover for yourself. I never tell anybody what to believe. I just say, for 40 years, I've been saying the same thing. Discover for yourself, experience for yourself. That's the only way you know. The old know thyself. And you only know thyself by experiencing that inner aspects of yourself. That's why I think so important. That's why OBEs are so important. It gives you that wisdom. Let's face it, the average person has no idea where they come from before they were born. They have no idea when they're gone, when they die. They have no clue. They have this belief system, oh, it's going to be nice, but they have no concept. They don't know why they're here, really. People are born in a body, and then they play the rules of their society and culture. You're born into a religion, so you stick with that religion. I always say to people that are in a religion, what would you believe if you were born in Iraq or China or Iran? What would you believe today? It would be totally different. You have to... obtaining the answers for yourself is one of the greatest benefits of out-of-body experiences. It just opens up this whole exciting world.
Yeah, it really does. And actually, as I'm sitting here talking to you now, it makes me realize I probably should spend less time just goofing off in the real time zone or this locale one, flying around, walking through walls, and maybe spend more time on trying to do this self-discovery and learn something new. Using higher self now or next level now, or try to reach these higher, more profound levels where I can actually learn something.
Yeah, it's all about obtaining self-knowledge through experience. That's why the ultimate thing, that's why I mentioned this whole concept of higher self now. Once you open to that, you can really have a mind-blowing, profound experience for yourself. And then you decide what you are. Don't let someone else tell you. That's because no one can explain it it's so profound. Words can't encompass it. What we are, how amazing we are as just conscious beings. I mean, we're quite incredible beings with these things that have this unlimited potential for creation. And once you start tapping into that, you really, it's so exciting. And you realize that the journey is just beginning. So many people think death is the end, this physical death, that's the end. No, it's not. It's the beginning. I write about this in my latest book. I emphasize it. Death is just the beginning. It's like you're just getting out of the crib a little bit. That's how the beginning it is. I talk about many levels of evolution that we will be going through. And being a physical person is just like the chrysalis. I mean, we're just at the very entry stages of the process that we're part of. And it's quite exciting.
It is. Yeah, it really is. All right, so the next question is in regards to techniques. So a lot of the techniques that you talk about are very visualization based. So for example, the target technique I think is the one that you're best known for. What advice would you give to somebody who has trouble with visualization? Is there something else that's non-visualization based you'd recommend, or should they just practice visualizing?
That's why I teach in my workshops. People end up experiencing 24 different techniques. People today are using motion techniques. If you there's a lot of approaches to OB work. If you're a terrible visualizer, then you have to find what resonates with you. Today, I'm finding more and more people are using motion techniques, and some of them are quite simple. I have people in my workshops doing, I think it's probably 4 or 5 motion techniques. One of the classic is the shamanic technique, where there's a little visual in here, and that is you imagine yourself lying. That is considered a visual and a motion technique. A more classic one would be just imagine, or many people have a rocking chair in their home, for instance. Let's keep it very simple. Most people have some kind of rocking chair. You physically rock in your chair, and then you go into your OB meditation, bringing that tactile feeling of rocking into your meditation. A hammock does the same thing, where you just feel yourself rocking. Or some people, if you're a boater, you're used to the feeling of a boat rocking out on the water. That's a motion technique. And you bring in that feeling of motion and you recreate that feeling of motion in your mind. That's essentially what a motion technique is. Motion can stimulate, let's just say, activate your energy body to extend your eyes. That's the approach that many people find successful. I use multiple motion techniques in my workshops because we have enough, 6 days, we have enough time to do them. Everybody responds to a different approach. But generally speaking, with practice, visual, I started out with the target technique, 72. I was a terrible visualizer at first. I was. It was new to me. It took me 24 days to have my first OBE. I worked at it. People forget this. Bob Monroe was a natural. He was popping out of his body and all this. That wasn't me. I worked at it. I worked hard at it. And I was dedicated. I think I'm going to do this. And if a lot of people give up too soon, they say, oh, I've had people write to me, I've been doing your techniques for 3 or 4 days now, and it's just not working. I get that kind of letter a week or 2 weeks. People, we live in a society where if it's not instant gratification, they give up. OBE practice is just like meditation. It's a kind of mindset. It's a lifetime commitment, really. If you're a meditator, you're not a meditator for 3 weeks. You're a lifetime meditator. It's the same kind of thing. You incorporate this mindset. OBE work is a form of meditation with intention. That's all it is. And unfortunately, our society separated it into 2 boxes. Oh, this is meditation, this is OBE work. I disagree with that completely. It's the same thing. It's meditation with a strong intention to have an out-of-body experience. And it's a lifetime commitment. There's no downside. And people get too upset with results. Nobody's into meditation and then a month later gets pissed off because they're not the Buddha. Nobody does that. But yet in OBE practice they do. I've been doing this for a month and nothing. You have to have that commitment of this is a practice that I'm going to do. You have to, you have to learn to control the mind. You have to learn to relax. You have to learn to deepen your state. There's a series of things that you do have to dedicate yourself to. It's just like meditation. So that you can go deeper and deeper in what some people call still. Same thing with OBE. The basic practice of meditation applies to OBE work. You have to be able to still that mind. You have to be able to get deep. You have to be able to get to that stage where you can let go of all the monkey mind. That's all part of it. But people don't connect the dots here. So I think it's very important that people today realize that this is OBE work is really meditation with intention. And that way you have that longer term feeling about it. There's always benefits. Same benefits you get from meditation you get from an OBE practice. You're stilling the mind, controlling the monkey mind. You get great insights. You're starting to download information occasionally that can be helpful in your physical life. It's great for your physical body, for God's sake. There's a lot of physical benefits and mental benefits to the practice. It goes beyond just this fixation with I have to have this end result, or I'm a loser, or I'm not successful. That's not that's not a good mindset. The better mindset is to be I'm open to anything. Because you can have a profound OBE and have an inner experience and never exteriorize. We put these in separate boxes. And they're all an inner journey, just that some people that meditate don't exteriorize. But it's the same basic journey of consciousness. We're moving inward. So I think a broader classification or perception is helpful.
Yeah, one of the things that you touched on that I'd like to go back to just for a second is the idea of these motion-based techniques. So I found very early on that motion is incredibly powerful when you're in this void state or this mind-awake, body-asleep state. And so me being the computer geek that I am, I took my phone, I found a YouTube video of a roller coaster, and then I held the video 3 inches from my face for like an hour, and I just memorized the sensation or the scenery and every point of view, going all the way around these loops, going backwards, and tried to feel what it would feel like in my stomach if I were riding on the roller coaster. And then I put my phone down, went to bed, and I used this visualization, and it was incredibly effective. And I've used that many times since. It's just the more intense the motion is, the more effective I find the visualization to be.
Yeah, a lot of people are getting positive results. A lot of people use the roller coaster. It's almost a roller coaster technique, where you imagine yourself on a roller coaster. And a lot of people today are roller coaster fanatics. They go to different parks and all. If that's a great one, feel that feeling of flying downward in the roller coaster. Oh man, that's a powerful OBE technique. You have to have the other elements in it too. You have to still the mind. You have to get so relaxed. You have to get into a meditative state, and then ideally, and then bring in the visual of this motion technique, and then hold it as your last conscious thought. That's when it'd be most effective.
Oh yeah, I agree. I
That
found exactly the same thing to be the case.
simple things, the hammock, and imagine yourself rocking in the hammock. People I get all kinds of feedback from people on motion techniques.
You know, one more thing in regards to techniques is I found that one of the most common problems with techniques, just based on my own communication with people through my
Yeah,
channel, is that people just tend to jump from technique to technique to technique, and they don't spend enough time to really
yeah,
give it a good solid try and see if it's going to work.
yeah.
You know, they read about a technique in a book or on a forum, or they hear about it in a video, and then they try it that night, and it doesn't work for them, and so then they toss it aside and they move on to the next technique, and I feel like they really don't ever succeed because they don't stick with one.
24 days.
Yeah, much less than that, and you really
Right.
will never know if that technique is effective or not.
I always stick with the same technique for a month. Think about it. What's the old saying? It takes 21 days to create a habit. From a psychological standpoint. Same applies to this. I think it takes, for most, now everybody's different. Some people are more have just natural abilities and are more open. So there's no rules, but I'm just speaking in general. It takes for most people 21 days should be the minimum you should stick with a technique before you say it's not working for me. But it took me 20. If I would have given up in 21, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Because I would have probably just said hell with it. And the thing is, look at the different classifications of techniques. In other words, do a motion technique for a month, and then whatever you have to follow your intuition, and then find another kind of. In other words, maybe if motion techniques aren't working well for you, then maybe go to do the target technique for a month and get a full shot, because you're reprogramming your conscious and subconscious mind to a new ability. People forget this. It's the reprogramming that's important. Your energy body's adjusting. And it's also good to open up your energy centers and do some pulsing of your energy in other words, if you're going to do it, make a full commitment to it. But you're right, that jumping from technique to technique, and I think that's what most people do nowadays. It just doesn't work. It's not a good approach. If it did work, it's pure luck, probably, that you hit on one that just happens to be just right for you. Because everybody resonates with their own approach, pretty much. Some people can meditate, and they'll start having experiences.
Yeah, projection during meditation is something I have not yet accomplished.
I mean, I know people like that. But let's face it, they read a book on OBEs, probably. So it's somewhere in their subconscious mind that this is a possibility. And nobody talks about, I think that's an overlay that's probably impacted that meditative experience. But some people are just more, let's just say, naturally open than others.
You know, before we move on, there's one more thing that you touched on that I think is a really valuable piece of advice, and that is to go deep before you bother trying to do any of this visualization or any of these techniques. Typically when you watch a YouTube video and they tell you how to do this, they basically just say, start climbing a rope or something like that. And what I found is that these techniques, they don't become effective until you're in this mind awake, body asleep, this void state. As soon as you become,
Yes.
as soon as you get into that deep state, these techniques suddenly start to have power and start to actually do something. But until then, all it is it's imagination, and great, it's good for practice, but it's not going to get
Exactly. That may be the biggest mistake, I think, or maybe a strong word. sidestep or error that's being done by people that are practicing. I think maybe that you got to go deep first, then begin, because you're not going to be able to hold it. The average person can only hold, I mean, there's different theories about how long, but the average person can only hold a focused state of consciousness for like 5 minutes or so. I mean, and you have to wander. You're bored. So you're better off, I always say this, get to that, what Bob Monroe would call focus 10 state, and which I teach progressively. I use HemiSync in my shops. Everybody's in their own check unit. They're listening for they're listening to HemiSync in every experience through different focus levels, and are going deeper and deeper. But I have them going through a succession. I want everyone to be at focus 10, and then you begin your motion technique. Then you begin your visualization. Then you begin whatever technique you're doing so you don't burn yourself out. And that's what many people are doing. They burn themselves out too early. I mean, mentally burn themselves out. And then they have no results and they don't know why. So it's critical that but everybody's different. I teach self-hypnosis countdowns. That can be helpful for people. It's been helpful for me, but I used to be a hypnotherapist that did past life regressions 30 years ago. So that was part of my personal training, and I can go deep just by doing a countdown. And that's what I do and I have done for many years. I count myself down. I lay down with my head propped up. It's the way I've done it for years. I don't find sitting to be effective. Some people do, I don't. Everybody's different in that regard. But I lay down and I do a countdown, 10, relaxed. And I just do a self-countdown, deeper, 9, deeper and deeper, 8, deeper and deeper. And I count myself down. By the time I hit 1, because I've self-programmed myself over decades, by the time I hit 10, I'm in a pretty good state there. And that's what needs to be done. That's the prep work that has to, and everybody's different. You can use self-hypnosis. Some people find sound technology like binaural beats or HemiSync can be helpful in that regard. Everybody has to find the method. Deep breathing can help, of course. Any form of meditation that'll get you deep can be, you do that first. And then when you're really totally still and on the edge, that's when you begin. You kick in your technique.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to go back to that because I feel like that's a really important piece that people tend to miss. They just overlook it.
Oh, it's super important.
And that leads to frustration.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll burn yourself out so quick. And by the way, now on this, I find that, you mentioned about indirect techniques. Indirect techniques are what most people respond to. I don't personally know anyone who's been really super effective at holding that constant state of consciousness. I mean, there's a few, but the vast majority, I don't even waste people's time on direct techniques. I actually don't.
Yeah, direct is a difficult way to go.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, the Buddhists, the monks, there's a few books, yogis. I mean, these guys have been meditating since they were 6 years old. That are some of these people that have written that are good at keeping a direct thread of consciousness through. Very few people in our society are capable, I have found, based on my 25 years of teaching this, are able to do that. So I don't even teach. I go right into indirect techniques, but I teach people about going as deep as possible and then go into your techniques. And then because people click out before they're OB. It's click out. Many people experience a vibrational state right after the click out or even before the click out, mild vibrations. but almost everyone has some kind of what we call a click out, a transfer of consciousness, let's call it. And that's the norm. People have unrealistic expectations, I feel, about direct techniques that are floating around. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah, and if you take some time and you go through YouTube videos out there, I would say like 90% of the videos that give you instruction on how to reach this state use a direct technique or a direct method
It's
rather than
exactly.
indirect.
It's absolutely. Yeah. I'm a practical guy. I like to use what I know works, and the indirect techniques are what I focus upon because I know they work. But like we've said, you have to go deep.
Yeah. Hey, well, William, I've had you for over an hour now. I think that maybe this is a good time to cut it off just to be respectful of your time.
Okay. Well, maybe do it again. Maybe next year or something.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fun. Actually, I'll probably see you before then. I plan on going to the Monroe Institute again here next year.
Oh, that would be great.
Hey, before you go, I should tell you about my secret ambition. So one day, hopefully years and years in the future, when you decide to retire from the Monroe Institute, I would love to be the one that takes your place teaching the out-of-body intensive.
Yeah. Well, somebody's going to have to replace me.
Yeah, but no time soon. You know, stick around for another 20 or 30 years. Give me some time to learn the rest of this stuff.
Well, that would be great. Well, it'd be great to see you there.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with us this morning.
Okay. Yeah, I hope it's helpful.
Well, I look forward to hopefully seeing you next year, and then, like you said, maybe one day down the road, next year or so, maybe we can touch base again and have another chat.
Okay. Bye bye now.
All right, bye bye.